I hadn't always been a CEO, and sometimes it was easy to forget that. I'd worked my way up from the bottom. I'd been the receptionist, the assistant, the one getting coffee and taking endless notes. I'd been passed over for promotions, told I wasn't ready or that I needed to be more assertive. So when I became CEO, I held on to those memories, reminding myself of the things people went through on their way up. And every now and then, I'd slip into disguise to see the world from those early days again, to remind myself of where I'd come from. So, here I was, dressed in a modest pencil skirt and blouse, my hair in a simple ponytail, walking into an interview for an entry-level position at one of my own company's branches. This was one of those rare, unannounced visits I liked to make. Only the HR director knew I'd be coming, and they were under strict orders to keep my identity confidential. The building was beautiful, but the reception I received was anything but. The front desk attendant looked at me with an indifferent gaze. When I asked for directions to the interview room, she barely glanced up from her phone before pointing down a hallway with a mumbled, "That way." I took a deep breath. Not here to judge, I reminded myself. I was here to observe. In the interview room, I found myself face to face with Rick, the hiring agent, and Mark, the regional manager. Rick was young with a quick, eager energy about him, though it bordered on arrogance. Mark, on the other hand, was a grizzled veteran of corporate America, with a piercing gaze and a demeanor that screamed self-importance. Rick gave me a glance, a short up-and-down appraisal, then flicked his eyes toward my resume. "So, Olivia, tell us why you think you'd be a good fit here," he said, with a slight sneer, barely hiding his disinterest. I straightened in my seat. "Well, as you can see on my resume, I have extensive experience in project management, and I believe," Mark cut me off with a smirk, leaning back in his chair. "Right, but what you believe isn't always what works here. Our industry demands people who can handle the real stress of the job. Judging by your past experience, you've worked in, what, smaller firms?" His tone dripped with condescension. I clenched my hands under the table. "Actually, yes. I have experience in several small to medium-sized enterprises, but I believe the skills I've developed translate well to larger corporations." Rick raised an eyebrow. "We don't just need people with skills, Olivia," he said, almost laughing. "We need loyalty and commitment. People who understand the culture here." He tapped his pen on the table and looked at Mark, as if to confirm something. Mark leaned forward. "Olivia," he said, and his tone had shifted. There was something unsettling in his gaze as he scanned me. From my hands folded on the table to the small chain around my neck. "You're quite ambitious, aren't you?" "Yes, I am," I replied evenly, though his gaze was starting to make my skin crawl. "Well, you know," he continued, "we've had plenty of applicants like you. Ones who are eager, maybe even overeager, to prove themselves." He gave me a slow, uncomfortable smile. "Some of them make it. Most don't." Rick grinned beside him, and I felt a flash of irritation. "We're looking for adaptability," Mark went on, "someone who's flexible and knows how to follow directions. You wouldn't have any problem with that, would you, Olivia?" I bit back a retort, keeping my tone level. "I believe in following direction when it aligns with the company's goals." "Yes. Company goals. Right." Mark leaned back, a smirk playing at his lips. "Tell me, Olivia, are you married?" The question came out of nowhere, and I felt a surge of indignation. "I don't see how that's relevant." Mark shrugged, glancing at Rick, who looked highly amused. "It's just good to know who's committed to their work and who has other distractions." I forced myself to remain calm. "My focus is solely on my career at the moment," I replied carefully. Rick chuckled. "You seem a bit defensive, Olivia. We're just trying to get to know you. Part of the culture here is openness." He exchanged a look with Mark, and I felt their condescension settle on me like a weight. Mark's gaze lingered. "A woman like you could go far here if she made the right connections," he said smoothly. He crossed his arms and leaned back, looking entirely too pleased with himself. I could feel my pulse quicken as he went on. You know, it's not just about qualifications, Olivia. It's about who you know and who you can trust. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. Trust, loyalty, understanding the little unspoken rules. His smile was pointed. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable, and I had to remind myself to keep breathing. I knew this tactic all too well, the veiled insinuations, the subtle intimidation. My jaw tightened. Well, I said, meeting his gaze directly. I appreciate you taking the time to explain the culture here. He smirked, clearly satisfied with his own cleverness. So, Olivia, what are you willing to do to get this job? That was it. I'd had enough. I sat up straighter, and this time my voice was firm, the polite mask slipping just a bit. Actually, there's something I'd like to share with you both. Since we're discussing company culture and what it takes to succeed here. They both looked at me, surprised, as I pulled a small badge from my bag, the one that identified me as CEO of this very company. I held it out, letting the logo gleam in the light. Rick's face turned white, and Mark's smirk vanished. I smiled, but it wasn't a friendly one. You see, gentlemen, I'm not here for an entry-level job. I came here as part of an internal review of our hiring process. My gaze was direct, unblinking. And I must say, I'm appalled by the discrimination, the unprofessionalism, and frankly, the complete lack of respect I've witnessed in this room. They were both speechless, jaws hanging slightly open. I continued, my tone steely. Rick, your attitude toward candidates is unacceptable. And Mark, I turned my gaze on him. I'm disappointed that someone in your position would engage in such predatory behavior. Mark stammered. I had no idea. No, I cut him off. You had no idea who I was. But you did no better than to treat any candidate this way. I expect my employees to uphold the company's values, not exploit and demean others. I stood, smoothing my skirt. I'll be filing a formal report with HR, and both of you can expect to hear from me soon. I met their stunned expressions with one final look. The culture of this company will not tolerate people who abuse their power. As I strode out of the interview room, my mind was racing with a mixture of anger and satisfaction. But I wasn't finished yet. There was still a crucial part of this experience to address, both for myself and for anyone who would step into that interview room in the future. I headed straight to the executive offices, where I knew Carol, the head of human resources, would be. Carol was one of the few people who knew about my undercover visit. She'd helped coordinate the details to make sure I would be treated as any other candidate, and it was clear now that we'd uncovered a serious problem. When I walked into her office, she looked up, concern flashing in her eyes as soon as she saw my expression. Olivia, she said, standing up, how did it go? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Carol, I've seen some poor hiring practices in my time, but this was beyond anything I expected. Both Rick and Mark not only belittled me as a candidate but took it further with personal and inappropriate comments. Her expression shifted to one of deep disappointment and anger. I'm so sorry you had to experience that, Olivia. This behavior is completely unacceptable. I know, I replied, my voice firm. We have a culture we're proud of, and this is not it. If they're treating me like this, I can't even imagine what other candidates have been through. I could see her nodding, already taking mental notes. What would you like to do? She asked, her face set with determination. I want an immediate review of this branch's hiring processes, I said. And both Rick and Mark need to be put on immediate leave until we finish the investigation. We're going to send a strong message. Carol nodded. I'll arrange for a full review. We can conduct interviews with other candidates they've met recently and get feedback from employees in their departments. It might give us a clearer picture. Good. And let's not hold back, I replied. This needs to be thorough. I don't want anyone else treated this way, not in my company. With our plan in motion, I left Carol's office, feeling a renewed sense of resolve. There was one more step left, one that would be a fitting end to my experience at this branch, an all-hands meeting with every employee at the location. It was time to set the record straight about the standards of respect, professionalism, and integrity that our company represented. Within an hour, the meeting was arranged. Employees filed into the main conference room, buzzing with curiosity. The rumor mill must have been in full swing. Many looked at me with a mix of confusion and awe. To them, I was just another candidate, until now. Once everyone was settled, I stepped to the front, taking a steadying breath before I began. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Olivia Grayson, CEO of this company, I said, pausing as a wave of shocked expressions washed over the crowd. And today, I want to share with you an experience I had, right here in this building. I explained my visit, my intention to understand what candidates go through when they come to us. I shared, without naming names, some of the comments, the lack of professionalism, and the outright inappropriate behavior I'd encountered. The room was silent, and I could see the impact my words were having on them. We are a company that values integrity, respect, and a commitment to helping each of us grow. And when any of us fails to show those values, it weakens all of us. That's why I'm taking this matter very seriously. I glanced around the room, letting my gaze linger for a moment. I want to make something very clear. We do not tolerate discrimination, intimidation, or disrespect, not from anyone, at any level. I am holding myself accountable to those values, and I expect every person here to do the same. One of the employees, a young woman near the front, raised her hand tentatively. Does this mean there'll be changes in management? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded. Yes. We're undergoing a full review of our hiring and management practices at this branch. If anyone here has experienced similar behavior, I encourage you to speak with HR. This company is only as strong as our commitment to each other's well-being. The young woman's face brightened, and I could see some of the other employees exchanging hopeful glances. They had been seen, and I knew they had stories, ones they might finally be willing to share. When the meeting ended, several employees approached me, wanting to share their own experiences with the toxic work environment under Mark and Rick. There were stories of broken promises, backhanded compliments, and constant undermining of women and junior employees. It was clear now that what I'd experienced wasn't an isolated incident. This wasn't just a bad day for Mark and Rick. This was a pattern, a culture of intimidation they'd fostered at this branch. It took weeks to sift through all the testimonies and conduct interviews, but by the end, we had everything we needed. Mark and Rick were officially terminated, and a new management team was put in place, one that understood and respected the culture we wanted to build. Months later, I returned to that branch, unannounced again. This time, the receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. The entire atmosphere had changed. There was a buzz of energy and respect that hadn't been there before. Employees seemed happier, and the feedback we received from new hires was overwhelmingly positive. Months passed, and as the changes I'd implemented began to ripple through the company, I decided to continue my undercover visits. The experience had reminded me how much influence managers wielded over our workplace culture, for better or worse. I wanted to see if what we were building at one branch could thrive across the company. So, one crisp autumn morning, I headed to another branch in the heart of the city. This time, I dressed as a casual candidate again, wearing a simple blazer, no jewelry, and minimal makeup. I kept a low profile and applied for an entry-level position, requesting to interview with their hiring manager, Lisa. This branch had a solid reputation on paper. Their quarterly results were strong, and employee turnover was low. But as I'd learned before, the numbers only told part of the story. As I walked into the branch, I was immediately greeted with a welcoming smile by the receptionist, Sarah. She was in her early 20s, and her upbeat attitude filled the lobby with energy. Hi. Are you here for an interview? She asked, noticing my resume folder. Yes, I am, I replied, smiling. Her enthusiasm was contagious. Great. Just take a seat, and I'll let Lisa know you're here. She's wonderful, Sarah added, genuinely. I've been here for a year now, and she's helped me so much. I nodded, already sensing the difference in atmosphere compared to the previous branch. Employees walked by with a confident ease, chatting quietly with one another, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to be there. It was refreshing. A few minutes later, Lisa appeared. She was a petite woman in her 40s with a warm, professional demeanor. She greeted me with a firm handshake and led me to her office. The decor in her office was simple yet inviting, with a framed quote on the wall that read, "Lead with empathy." Lisa settled in across from me, folding her hands. So, Olivia, it's lovely to meet you. Tell me, what inspired you to apply here? I took a breath, grounding myself in the role of candidate once again. Well, I've heard positive things about the company culture here. I'm looking for a place where I can grow and where leadership truly values its people. Lisa smiled, and I noticed a hint of pride in her eyes. That's exactly what we're about here, she said. We're a team. I believe every person has something unique to offer, and it's my job to help you find where you can contribute most. As the interview progressed, I felt like I was talking to a mentor rather than a hiring manager. Lisa was thoughtful in her questions, asking about my aspirations, my strengths, and my challenges. She never rushed me, and her follow-up questions showed that she genuinely listened to my responses. Halfway through, she leaned forward. You know, Olivia, we have an interesting approach here, she said, her tone thoughtful. Once a week, I meet with everyone in my department. No matter their role, just to check in. We don't talk about deadlines or tasks, we talk about what's on their mind, if they're feeling valued, if there's anything they need from me. I couldn't help but smile. That sounds refreshing, I said, genuinely impressed. I haven't heard of many managers taking that kind of time with their employees. She nodded, almost wistfully. I know. But I believe in empowering people, and that starts with understanding them as individuals. The company has given me a lot of freedom to build a culture like this, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my career. As she continued speaking, I realized that Lisa was everything I wanted in a manager. She was compassionate but held high standards, balancing support with accountability. She was the kind of leader I hoped our company could cultivate in every branch. Toward the end of the interview, I decided to gently push the boundaries to see if her kindness extended to firm, ethical leadership. Lisa, I started, I have a friend who's really interested in this company too. She's smart, but she doesn't have much experience. Do you think she could get in if I, put in a word for her? Lisa looked at me thoughtfully, her expression steady. Olivia, I believe in giving everyone a fair chance. But we don't make exceptions based on who someone knows. Your friend is welcome to apply, and if she's a fit, we'd love to have her. But we can't bend our standards just because she's a friend of a candidate. I nodded, impressed once more. I respect that. Thank you for being honest. She smiled warmly. We're here to do right by everyone who comes through our doors. And that includes holding ourselves accountable. As we wrapped up, I felt a sense of pride in knowing that we had someone like Lisa representing our values so authentically. This was exactly the kind of culture I wanted to build across the company. Before I left, Lisa offered to walk me back to the lobby. As we walked, several employees greeted her warmly, sharing quick updates or asking questions. She responded to each one with genuine interest, never brushing anyone off. When we reached the lobby, she turned to me. Regardless of the outcome, Olivia, thank you for coming in today. I can tell you're someone who values growth and integrity, and I admire that. The words touched me more than she realized. I extended my hand, shaking hers firmly. Thank you, Lisa. I've learned a lot from just this interview alone. As I left the branch, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This experience was a powerful reminder of the kind of leadership that changes lives, creating an environment where people can thrive, be themselves, and feel valued. A few days later, I returned, this time without the disguise. I'd planned a meeting to recognize Lisa and her team, thanking them for exemplifying everything we stood for. I wanted to celebrate her, to let her know that her efforts didn't go unnoticed. When I walked into her office as the CEO, she looked both surprised and delighted. I explained my purpose and praised her for creating a branch that truly lived by our core values. In response, she smiled, a bit shyly. "Thank you, Olivia. It means the world to know that our work here has made a difference." "It's more than that, Lisa," I said, my voice filled with admiration. "You're not just doing great work. You're setting a standard. You're reminding us all of what this company can and should be." By the time I left, I knew this branch was in good hands, and I felt a renewed commitment to ensuring that every branch could be as welcoming and supportive as this one. From that day forward, Lisa's branch became a model for our training programs. We shared her practices across all branches, hoping her empathy and standards would inspire managers everywhere. In her, I saw the kind of leader who could carry the company's vision far beyond what I'd ever imagined, embodying the heart and soul of everything I'd hoped for when I became CEO. And that was the real lesson. Leadership wasn't just about results or power, it was about making an impact, one person at a time. And people like Lisa were the true cornerstone of our company's future. After my visit to Lisa's branch, word started to spread. Her methods and the changes we'd implemented at her branch sparked a wave of excitement and curiosity within the company. Managers across different regions wanted to know how they could create similar cultures of respect, growth, and empathy within their own teams. Lisa's branch had become a blueprint, a model of what our company could be at its very best. Inspired by the momentum, I decided to make these undercover visits a permanent part of my role as CEO. I wanted to keep experiencing the company from the ground up, meeting the people who were the true heart of our organization. These visits would serve as an ongoing reality check, a way to stay connected to the day-to-day experiences of our employees. They also kept our leadership accountable, ensuring that our values weren't just words on a wall but actions that were genuinely practiced. One evening, I received an email from a branch manager named Alex, asking if I'd be willing to visit his branch. He'd heard about Lisa's success story and admitted he was eager to bring a similar atmosphere to his team but needed guidance. This branch was located in a more challenging part of town, where competition was fierce and employee turnover high. Morale was low, and from his message, it was clear Alex felt the weight of it. He was honest about his struggles, and I admired his humility. When I arrived, Alex greeted me warmly in the lobby. He was a tall, soft-spoken man in his mid-30s, with a slight look of worry in his eyes. He led me into his office, where I could see the signs of a manager trying his best under difficult circumstances, files stacked high, memos pinned to every available surface, and a well-worn notebook filled with notes and ideas for improvement. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Grayson," he began, almost nervously. "I know you must have 1,000 things on your plate, so I really appreciate you taking the time to visit us." "Please call me Olivia," I replied, giving him a reassuring smile. "And thank you for reaching out. It takes courage to ask for help, and that's something I admire in a leader." He nodded, his expression softening. "Honestly, I'm not sure where to start. We've been struggling for a while now. Our turnover rate is high, and I'm afraid I haven't been able to inspire the team the way I want to. I feel like I'm failing them." I could see how much this weighed on him, and I felt a surge of empathy. Leadership wasn't easy, especially in challenging environments, and here was a manager who cared deeply but was struggling to see the path forward. "Alex, tell me more about your team. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges they face?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "A lot of them are dealing with issues outside of work. Some have second jobs, others are single parents, and a few are just trying to make ends meet. They come in exhausted, And it's hard to motivate them because, well, life is hard for them.